the weather's foul outside like it is today, sometimes it's lovely just to curl up at Christmas with a glass of something warming by the fire with a good book. Well, today I want to recommend 5 of my favourite books that have got interesting things to say about living in the countryside. Hello, welcome to English Country Life. Welcome to the cottage on a freezing cold, windy, wet day. We're better off in here today. My name's Hugh, and today I want to talk to you about some of my favourite books. We did a video last year where we talked about our 5 best reference books for those people who are interested in the small holding, self-sufficient kind of life. And I'll put a link somewhere up there. All those books, still great, still love them. But today I thought, well, since that was a popular video, why don't I cover some other kinds of books? And today I'm going to talk about my 5 best books about what it's like to live in the country. People's personal insights, personal experiences, some of their philosophies perhaps, but nothing heavy, just what country life is really about. Now, it's important to say, when I say book, I mean, I do love it. I love a good old book. I love the smells of them. I like hardback books with leather bindings and libraries. But I also love audiobooks on my phone with earbuds, because a lot of the time I'm working alone. I'm out in the workshop fixing a chicken coop, I'm weeding a vegetable bed, I'm harvesting, or I'm preserving, and I can't hold a book while I'm doing that. But I absolutely can listen to an audiobook on earbuds when I'm doing that kind of job, and it makes the day go better. And if you haven't tried it, I'm going to put a link down in the description to Audible. You can get a free audiobook, any book you want from their catalogue. You will get a free month's membership, and after that, if you enjoy it, it will just carry on renewing. If not, cancel your membership, you keep your free audiobook, you keep the player, you're under no obligation to carry on with it. But try it. It's a great way of enjoying a book while you work. Right, let's look at our first book. Bear with me on this first book because you probably think you know it. And it's If Only They Could Talk by James Herriot. It came out in 1970, and I read his books in school and loved them. And I think they've got a lot to do with why I like living in the countryside. But yeah, I'm sure we've all seen the TV shows, the old one and the new one, but you don't get stuff from the TV shows that are present in the books. Christopher Timothy's plummy accent doesn't give you the fact that James Herriot came from a working class Scottish background. You know, he was a Glaswegian that went to Yorkshire, and his love and his marvelling at the people and the landscapes and the animals when he's in that environment really shines through in the books. And a lot of his descriptions of the farmers who are having very, very hard lives and often tragedies with their livestock are really heartwarming and really endearing. I don't think they always translate fully onto the small screen. I love them so much, we've still got the whole series. Now, if you have read the books and you want something similar and you love that kind of feel-good factor of them, try Mike Panic. He's a guy who was a Metropolitan Police officer who returned to Yorkshire in a similar kind of area to the James Herriot books. And his books are fantastic. They're funny, they're light. They do talk again about serious subjects, but they really leave you with a feel-good feeling. My second selection for you is English Pastoral by James Rebanks. It's his second book, and I think it's his best book. And the book covers a lot of the history of his family farm, but also a lot of insights into how farming has evolved, how it's changed, and how it needs to change moving forward. It's a very honest, often painfully honest book about the history of his family, about how his grandfather farmed very simply, and talking about his grandfather with scything thistles, and about how his father was driven and almost tortured by the mechanisation and expansion of the very large farming industries. And then James's own perspective about what we need to do going forward, about how we can't only have bigger and bigger fields and bigger tractors and more mechanisation and take more and more from the land without putting anything back. Things for nature, things for soil health, things that actually support our farms in the long term. It's not a dry book. It's really entertaining, it's really interesting, and at times painfully honest about James and his family, but really very insightful about things that we can and should do moving forward in farming. This selection is one of an author that, again, you may have heard of, and this is The Yorkshire Shepherdess by Amanda Owen. She's big on TV now. She wasn't when I first found this book, but trust me, the book again has things in it that you're not going to get from any TV series. It's a fantastic book. One of the reasons that I included it is because Amanda talks very honestly and candidly about the fact she's not from farming stock. She was a model, she was a girl from a town, she worked in a shop, but she had the passion, she had the love, she wanted to move to the countryside, and she did. And she learned to be a shepherd. And eventually she found a husband, Clive, and his farm, Ravensea, and it talks about what a hard life that is, because it's a remote hill farm, but her love of it comes shining through. There's a lot of personal history in there. She talks about the fact that her children have been born in front of the range and in laybys because she has a medical condition where when labour comes on she's not aware of it, and some of the issues that that can cause. So there's a lot of personal history, and the book is funny and touching and charming and illuminating all at the same time. I really recommend it, and I actually think Amanda is one of our premier countryside authors. In our first series, we talked about John Seymour, and the book I really recommended is not his best known work in that, but it's one called The Self-Sufficient Gardener, which I think is his absolute best reference work. But I'm going to include him again today because he wrote an autobiography called The Fat of the Land, and it's great. It's funny, it's witty. Any of you who've read any of his works before know his writing style is really self-deprecating, quite factual, but he kind of talks about all the things he got wrong, and great scene in this book where he talks about a pig killing, and it says it takes them 3 days to process their own pig, and by the end of it even the cat's got grease on it. He talks about all the things he's tried and got wrong, and the homebrew wine recipes that went terribly wrong and the ones that got terribly right. And I like the fact he says, well, when we make homebrew wine, a gallon at a time is pointless. 8 gallons is a good volume to make for homebrew wine. So he clearly had a pretty good life. But he doesn't hide the fact that it's hard work and that there's a shortage of money. And that kind of reassures me, because there are times when Fiona and I feel exactly the same. But also, what shines through is he'd rather be doing that than anything else. So I definitely recommend that. John Seymour's The Fat of the Land. And if you get that, having got his autobiography and probably having got one of his reference work, I'm going to throw a bonus book in here. You may not know, he also did one work of fiction called Retrieved from the Future. A sort of slightly apocalyptic, slightly dystopian view of the future. And it goes a lot, I think, to illustrate why he wanted the kind of lifestyle that he pursued. It's a good book, well worth a read. For my final recommendation, I struggled. I didn't struggle to pick an author. Trust me, I could ramble about books for years. But I struggled with this author to pick my favourite because I love everything he does. The author's name is John Lewis Stempel, and the favourite I have picked is a book called Meadowland. And what John does is he writes about an aspect of the countryside in his books. And you wouldn't think you could fill a book about a single meadow, but he does. And honestly, I was spellbound. I was fascinated by it because he talks about how meadows have evolved, how they need to be, all the different wildlife. And he'll talk about his experiences on one day in that meadow, and which wildlife he saw and what they were up to and what they were doing. And he'll talk about all the wild flowers that he saw and how that affects. And he kind of goes through a year of the meadow and he compares it and he contrasts it with a neighbouring field, which is just plain monoculture ryegrass as grown by a group that he calls the Chemical Brothers. So it's sprayed off and there's herbicides put on it to make sure there's nothing but ryegrass in there. And he talks about sort of the biodiversity and the wildlife it supports and all the rest of it. And it is, honestly, it's spellbinding, it's fascinating. It's almost like poetry at novel length, but in a really interesting and accessible way. And he's done lots of others. Actually, the first one of his I came across that really made me go, yeah, I like this guy. I really like what he's got to say. I like the way he says it. Was a book called The Wood. And it's him managing a small coppice woodland. Again, all the different trees, how they need to be managed, the life they support, the owls, the foxes, the rabbits, you know, everything that's going on in this wood and his day-to-day experiences of managing it in a very traditional way. And again, absolutely spellbinding book. And he's done one that's just a little bit different, and I really like that one. And it's called Woodston, and it's about his family farm. But it's the history of that farm and how it evolved, literally from sort of Saxon times. How that farm would have been then, what changed, why it changed, how it moved forward, right up to the modern day. Fabulous book. Honestly, none of his books would disappoint you. John Lewis Stemple. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. We will put a link in the description down below, both to the Audible free trial and our Amazon store, where you can find all of the titles that we've mentioned in this video and in previous videos. If I've missed your favourite author or your favourite country book, please tell us in the comments what it is. And if you'd like another video, and I have thought about perhaps doing one on best countryside books for children. If you'd like that, let us know and we'll make it. And if you want to see that video and everything else we do on country living, and you're not already a subscriber to the channel, just tap that subscribe button and the bell next to it. You'll hear every time we upload a new video. Whatever you do, have a wonderful Christmas, a happy new year, and come back and see us soon. Take care.